Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex here. Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to be ranking the F1 2019 driver lineups. Now, as I'm recording this, Lance Stroll hasn't been confirmed at Force India Racing Point, but I'm assuming it's going to happen, so we're going to go ahead with this video and pretend he's confirmed. He probably is confirmed as you're watching this, but just as I'm recording this, he isn't, so I just want to make that clear. So let's jump into this in the order they're listed on Wikipedia, and that is Ferrari first with Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. So I think this is a great lineup. You've got a great experience there in Sebastian Vettel, and you've got the great youth of Ferrari in Charles Leclerc. Now, if I am told correctly, or if I know correctly, Charles Leclerc is on a multiple-year contract. So, I mean, I doubt he's going to have a really rubbish first season at Ferrari, but if he does, I guess he's kind of safe because he knows that he's got a couple of years to learn and develop. And to be perfectly honest, whilst I love Kimi Räikkönen, I think it is good that Ferrari have decided now to promote the youth and see what they can do, because I think, let's say in 5 years' time, Raikkonen's probably not going to be in Formula 1, whereas Charles Leclerc definitely is going to be in Formula 1. So I think it was a great time now to promote him up to the main team. And I think he can really push Sebastian Vettel. Now, we've seen on a couple of occasions this year, he's been a bit, all over the place. I think in particular in some wet conditions, Charles Leclerc did struggle. But overall, he's been an incredibly talented driver throughout 2018. And I think many of us would say he's probably been one of the drivers of the season. I mean, of course, Lewis Hamilton's had a mega year, but Charles Leclerc, especially if we're looking at rookies, is definitely the driver of the season. So I'm really excited to see what happens here between these two. I think that whilst Charles Leclerc is going to be very quick, I don't know whether he's going to be able to jump in straight away and beat Vettel. That would be an incredible achievement if he has done that. And it isn't the first time where sort of a relatively inexperienced driver has jumped in and beaten Vettel if it does happen, because we remember back to Ricciardo in Red Bull in 2014. But I think that Sebastian Vettel has grown a lot since then, and I think that Charles Leclerc is still an incredibly talented driver, but I don't think he'll jump in and be able to go for the championship straight away, because I think that Ferrari, like they normally do, they'll give it 5 or 6 races, then they'll decide who they want to go for the championship, basically. We saw that by Monaco last year, where they're already favouring Sebastian Vettel by doing some certain dodgy strategy calls. So, yeah, I think we'll probably see Sebastian Vettel do good at the start of the season and probably ensure that he's the one going for the championship, not Charles Leclerc. But I'm sure that Charles Leclerc will win races next year. How many? I'm not sure, but I'd say at least 2 or 3. It's going to be a really exciting season. I'm just really happy that now Ferrari have decided to go with someone young, and I'm really hoping he fulfills the promise of how good he was at Sauber in 2018. So next on this list is McLaren and Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, who are confirmed for next year. So an interesting one. 2 brand new drivers to the team. Of course, Lando Norris has been the test driver for the last couple of seasons, but you know what I mean? In terms of race drivers, this is a completely brand new lineup. Now, I think there's been so many comparisons in the past where like a British rookie comes in to join an already proven Spanish driver at McLaren back to 2007, where Hamilton joined with Alonso. But of course, I don't know whether Carlos Sainz is quite on the calibre of Alonso. I'm not sure whether Norris is quite on the calibre as Hamilton, but I hope that in both of those regards, I hope they both prove me wrong. But we don't really know, to be perfectly honest. I can't be. I'm not saying they are. I'm just hypothetically saying maybe. I don't know if Lando Norris is going to be a 5-time world champion. I don't know whether Carlos Sainz is going to be a 2-time world champion that should have had more. Where am I going with this sentence? I don't know. But nonetheless, it's a very strong lineup in terms of the drivers. Both, we know how good they are. Lando Norris was a little bit up and down in the F2 season, but that was, I think, less down to him and more down to the learning the new car, because the F2 car in 2018 did have a lot of issues, and I'm not sure all of the team quite capitalised on that and quite understood what was going wrong soon enough. So I feel like maybe ART and George Russell, they just sort of were great throughout normally. They had a couple of off weekends, but yeah, definitely Carlin and Norris struggled a little bit more to get used to the car, and Lando Norris is like a year and a half younger than George Russell, if I remember correctly, so there's a bit of an age difference as well. But Lando Norris is undoubtedly a very, very talented driver, and I'm really excited to see what he does in Formula 1. But I'm not too optimistic about McLaren and what car they're going to be bringing to the table in 2019. So I'm giving my hope to McLaren and their two drivers because they deserve it. But I'm unsure. I'm unsure whether they're going to be able to fight back again where they should be, podiums and championships. I can't see it in 2019, unfortunately. So next up, Mercedes, Hamilton and Bottas. That's exactly the same as this year, and I think one of the few, if not the only lineup, which has stayed the same. I think it's the only lineup that stayed. Oh, except Haas, which we'll speak about in a minute. So yeah, Mercedes, Hamilton and Bottas. Obviously a strong lineup. Hamilton now 5-time world champion. Undoubtedly, in my mind, even though I'm not a Hamilton fan, he's probably the best driver on the grid right now. So that's my personal opinion, but not coming from any sort of fanboy either side. I don't support him, but I do feel like he's on his A game, and when Hamilton's on his A game, especially in 2018, he was kind of unstoppable, and I think he won over half the races, didn't he? Even though, Sebastian Vettel was close for a championship, Hamilton won over half the races. I think that kind of shows how good Hamilton was this year, especially towards the end of it. So I can't see Bottas really competing as much as I want it to happen. I want Bottas to go for a championship, but you feel like Bottas is in it really now to either win the championship or get kicked out of the team. Unless he really competes with Hamilton for a championship, I can't see him keeping his seat. He was so many times close to a good result in 2018 and then it slipped away from him, including Abu Dhabi. I mean, I honestly feel that Hamilton would have moved over for him later on in that race if Bottas was P2, but he just fell off a cliff halfway through and really started to struggle with his tyres, I think. I don't really know, but it really epitomised this whole season in a way. It just struggles throughout, unfortunately, for Bottas. So we'll see. I can't see Bottas surviving at Mercedes into 2020, but, he's such a nice guy. I hope he, picks up his game, and I hope he does well in 2019, but I can't see it happening. And I can see Lewis Hamilton battling for another championship and maybe making it 6. Next up, we'll stay with the other team that didn't change their lineup for 2019. The only other team, and that's Grosjean and Magnussen. Very strong lineup in the midfield. Grosjean had a really good second half of the season. Magnussen a very good first half of the season. If you put those two halves of the season together, it was a really good year for them. But they both had sort of opposing other sides to the year. So Grosjean had a bad start. Magnussen had a bad end, and maybe consistency throughout both their drivers is something they struggle with. Of course, both drivers are quite bold with their overtakes, let's just say that, especially Magnussen, which I love seeing. I love seeing his aggressive driving, but sometimes it does go a little bit too far. But I feel like they're both aggressive drivers, and maybe those extra risks they do take cause the issues that we saw with quite a lot of crashes with both drivers throughout this season. So I think it's a strong lineup. I think probably one of the better ones in the midfield. But at the same time, they need to iron out those mess-ups, those inconsistencies, because they're probably going to struggle a little bit more with their car next year in comparison to the rest of the field. They probably won't be battling for 4th place in the Constructors. And I think unless they iron out those mistakes, which both of them have had this year in 2018, they probably might be wary of losing their seat going forward into 2020. So we'll see. There's an option, maybe for both of them to lose their seat in 2020, but, they do good enough, they'll probably stay. So, next up, Red Bull and Verstappen and Gasly. Of course, Verstappen is sort of becoming the driver, the guy in the team now, a bit like when Sebastian Vettel was winning all those championships at Red Bull. Verstappen is very much becoming the person in the team, and everyone else is sort of folding around him. And whilst I think Gasly is a very talented driver, I do kind of feel he's going to be, made to be second fiddle to Verstappen in 2019, which is a bit of a shame, but I totally understand in some ways from Red Bull's point of view as well, because Verstappen's marketability is incredible. He's obviously very talented out on track, and on his day, a bit like Hamilton, he's kind of unbeatable sometimes, and I feel like if they put the car underneath Verstappen, there's a real chance that he'd go for a championship. But I guess there's a bit of a worry that they might not have the engine underneath them next year all the way through, because even though Honda's definitely been improving, we don't know by how much, because it's in a Toro Rosso and it's kind of hard to gauge how good they are when no one else has got a Honda power unit, or just no one else has really been racing with them. They've kind of been by themselves for a lot of the year. So, yeah, I think that Gasly's good. He's a very good driver. I think he's going to probably be made to be second fiddle to Verstappen. It's a very strong lineup, and a bit like Hamilton Bottas in a way. There's, I think, very much an A driver and a B driver in the team. I think that's going to become pretty clear pretty early on in the season. I think Gasly will get some good results. He'll get a couple of podiums for sure. I don't know whether he's going to win a race, but I think he's probably going to be close. But then I kind of feel like he might be moved out the way for Verstappen because of the championship permutations or something like that. It's going to be really interesting to see, and yeah, I think it's a strong lineup, but I kind of do feel that Gasly is going to be pushed to a side one bit. And let's move on to Ricciardo's new team, Mr. Ricciardo. What was I saying? Mr. Renault. It's Renault he's gone to, and he's joining Nico Hülkenberg in the team. Obviously, Carlos Sainz, who we've previously spoken about, has gone on to McLaren. So, Renault, Hülkenberg and Ricciardo, that's a very, very strong lineup. One, if not the strongest lineup in the midfield, in my opinion. And I still think they will be in the midfield. I think that Renault are going to make improvements for 2019, but I can't see them making up that second or so gap to Red Bull, who were obviously battling with the same engine in 2018, and there was still a big gap. There was a huge differential there in terms of car performance, even with the engine excluded. So yeah, I kind of feel like Renault probably will make some gains, probably be the fourth best consistently throughout the year, as they kind of been there pretty much this season, but they have had their moments where they haven't been the best of the rest. So we'll see, but I think it's a very, very, very strong lineup for a midfield team, and I think by the end of this coming season, in 2019, they will probably be challenging for podiums. Is that too much to say? I don't know. I feel like it might happen, but of course it's very early on to be predicting that. We're sort of talking about the driver lineups here today, but it's a very, very strong lineup, I'd say, and in my opinion, the strongest in the midfield. I don't know whether anyone else would agree. There isn't really another one that probably on that level. We'll see. There's maybe one or two, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with my opinion. I think Ricciardo and Hülkenberg is the best of the midfield teams. Let me know what your thoughts on that are in the description down below, the comment section down below, I should say. So, Sauber, they've got a brand new lineup for 2019. Raikkonen coming back from Ferrari, of course. He started his Formula 1 career at the Swiss team. And Antonio Giovinazzi, the Ferrari young driver who's coming through the ranks and has been given an opportunity after waiting in the sidelines for a couple of years. So I think that's fantastic to see. Ferrari obviously believed in him. They wanted to make sure that he got a Formula 1 seat at some point. Of course, we saw 2 races from him in the 2017 season, and he was pretty impressive in Australia, but then had a bit of a nightmare in China. Was it Malaysia? No, it was China, wasn't it? A bit of a nightmare in China. So we'll see which Giovinazzi we get, the one from Australia or the one from China in 2019. But that's also a very strong lineup, a very good experience and youth combination once again. I do feel like Raikkonen's going to pull out a few surprise results down the line. I think Sauber was getting really good by the end of the 2018 season, and we saw that when Charles Leclerc was trying to overtake Ricciardo on the opening lap or the opening laps of Abu Dhabi. I think we saw that Sauber have made a remarkable improvement over the past sort of 13 months now. They've really made a massive step up, so it's really good to see, and I feel like we're probably going to be seeing some, as I said, surprise results from Raikkonen. I think Giovinazzi will be a little bit inconsistent, but I think he'll score some decent points throughout the year. So overall, a good combination, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Kimi does in the midfield, assuming Sauber will be in the midfield. I mean, we don't know with any of these teams. Someone's going to have to be at the back. There's going to be one team that's struggling at the back. Who's that going to be? Is it going to be McLaren or Williams again? Or could we see someone like Haas or maybe even Sauber or Toro Rosso drop back to where we have seen them in the last couple of years? So Toro Rosso bringing back 2 old drivers. So Kvyat, obviously he raced for Toro Rosso, then Red Bull, then Toro Rosso, then got fired, then came back for like 1 race and then got fired again and went to Ferrari as a test driver. And Alex Albon was a Red Bull junior driver, which they then sacked, and then he started to do well, and then they decided to recall him back for 2019. So it's a bit of a coming home moment for both of these drivers, Kvyat and Albon, both experienced in their own right. I think this 1 year out is going to let Kvyat really mature as a person and a driver. And apparently Ferrari have been saying he's been really, really good in the sims, and he's been doing a really, really good job. And he's becoming much more of a level-headed driver. And as a Kvyat fan, I really wanted to see that. We've seen him here in his Red Bull days. It all got a little bit messy towards the end of those times, but he was undoubtedly a talented driver, and I feel like a lot of people forgot that towards the end of 2017, where obviously everything was not going his way. He got kicked out of Formula 1 and he was just making silly mistakes. I hope a lot of that has been ironed out through this sort of year off, this sort of calm down period. And I feel like it probably has. And it's just really now how good of a car Toro Rosso deliver and whether he can secure a seat for 2020. I don't know what's going to happen here. And Alex Albon, I think a really good story for him. He probably wasn't even going to be racing in the F2 season in 2018 because he had very limited budget. But he found some backers last minute to compete in the season. And he managed to go on there to even battle for a championship. He took it down to the last round, eventually finishing third place in the championship overall. Obviously, that meant that Red Bull were like, this guy's pretty good. Why did we fire him in the first place? And they sort of signed him back for the 2019 season in Formula 1. So, a good combination here. I'm really excited to see how both of these drivers do. Kvyat is a genuinely talented driver who got a bit lost in his own ways in Formula 1. And he could have done a lot better, but he just made some silly mistakes. But I think that year out's really going to have calmed him down. And Alex Albon's been impressive throughout his junior career, but being sacked from Red Bull, obviously, stirred it up in his mind that I've got to make the most of this now. I've got to really prove to them that I was wrong, and it worked. And he delivered over the last couple of years, battling for a GP3 title, battling for a Formula 2 title this year, and yeah, he's now developed into a very, very decent driver. So I'm really excited to see how this combination do in 2019. Hopefully, Toro Rosso give them the goods along with Honda. So finally, on to the last two teams on my list here today, and Racing Point, or whatever they're going to be called in 2019. Of course, as I said already, Stroll hasn't been announced as I start recording this video, but he's probably going to be announced by the time you're watching it, and Perez are their two drivers. Perez generally is the guy that gets the surprise podium here or there. He's been pretty consistent at getting a podium most seasons, I think bar two. Since 2012 he's been on the podium. So I'm interested to see what Perez does next year, whether Racing Point, with all this new funding, does develop into a better team, because they were sort of seen as best of the rest for a couple of seasons, but now Renault, of course, they've had that big budget and a big push from Renault, obviously now coming back in as a proper manufacturer. They've got better and better each year, now overtaken Racing Point. So I want to see whether Racing Point can take that charge back now with all this brand new funding, whether they can challenge Renault once again. And I think Perez is a genuinely very talented driver. He might not be championship winning potential if he was in a top car, but very good driver nonetheless. So, Lance Stroll. Now, of course, everyone has their different opinions on him. I personally think he gets a little bit too much hate for what it's, what it is. I mean, of course, he hasn't really had a great year, and the fact that his dad bought a Formula 1 team, which allowed him to stay in Formula 1, does kind of rub people up the wrong way, and understandably so, especially because, obviously, you look at 2017 and 2018, and whilst he got a podium in 2017, it was a little bit lucky. But the thing is, he did show flashes of pure pace throughout both of these seasons, in both 2017 and 2018. So, in my opinion, he maybe doesn't deserve the level of car he's going to be in 2019, but he probably does deserve to be in Formula 1. I mean, he won the FIA Formula 3 Championship at an incredibly high level, and he won that and dominated, I think, like no one else has really done before. So I think it's a little bit unfair to criticise him as much as some people do. I understand why people do criticise him, and you need people to criticise people because it keeps people level and it keeps people on their toes, because otherwise people become complacent. But I do feel he gets a little bit too much unnecessary hate, and I don't feel like anyone, even maybe Emilio himself, sees him as the best driver on the grid. I mean, of course, every driver needs to have self-belief, but I think he probably realises he's not the next Lewis Hamilton, Vettel or Schumacher, but he realises he's a talented driver who can have a long career in Formula 1, and he just needs to make the most of it. And I think that Lance Stroll in his career can probably get podiums. He might even be able to win a race if the car's there, but over a season, I don't know whether he's probably got it in him. But overall, he's a very good driver, and I just think everyone maybe should calm down on the hate with him. I mean, I understand why people are angry, but I wouldn't go that far. But you can understand, I suppose, when someone like Esteban Ocon isn't on the grid and Lance Stroll is. You know, if you look at their backgrounds, they're pretty similar, but then Lance Stroll hasn't really proven as much in Formula 1 as Ocon has in 2017 and 18, and 2016 as well. So, that's my personal opinion. It's a good lineup. Of course, not the best lineup in the midfield. It's a decent lineup. I think Perez is going to teach Stroll a lot. Stroll has had a bit of an uncompetitive car, especially in 2018. So he's gonna need to do good in 2019. He's gonna have to be quite close to Perez, in my opinion. Otherwise, people will, of course, have their ideals of him backed up. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough about Lance Stroll. Personal opinion, I like the guy. I have nothing against him. I know he's not the best driver on the grid. Billion times better than I am as a racing driver, but I haven't even done a race yet. But you know, it's coming soon, so maybe I'm coming there to beat Lance Stroll soon. If I win my race or whatever, we'll see. But yeah, let's move on from Racing Point and go on to Williams, which is a really good feel-good story as Robert Kubica comes back to Formula 1 to join Formula 2 champion George Russell. So firstly on Kubica, of course, we know he's an incredibly talented driver, someone that deserved to be in Formula 1 for... Basically, he didn't deserve to not be in Formula 1. But of course, his sad rally accident caused that to be the case. So unfortunately for him, he spent many years out from the sport. But good on Williams for bringing him back. And my hope is just that his hand or his arm that is damaged because of that accident doesn't affect him too much. We don't really know that over a long test session or like a long race, what that would do to him. Say like 2 hours of Singapore. Is it going to be able to deal with it and be fine throughout? We'll see. I'm wishing him the best. He's such a nice guy. And I think who doesn't want Kubica in Formula 1, really? And of course, George Russell, in my opinion, this guy is the one to watch out for in 2019, especially one of the younger drivers as well. Of course, we've got Verstappen and Leclerc in the top teams, but if you're looking for a young driver to look at in the sort of bottom half of the field or the bottom portion of the field, I'd say look at George Russell. This guy is so talented. The way he went about dealing with all the issues in Formula 2 with the car not being right, and the maturity and the speed and everything, the consistency. I mean, this guy's really got it all, and maybe we're putting too much pressure on him because, in a way, there's so many similarities from him and Lewis Hamilton with their success in junior Formula at the same sort of levels. I mean, Hamilton F2 and GP2 and Russell GP3 and Formula 2, they both had their similar sort of success at a similar sort of age, and they're sort of going into a similarly big team in a way. I mean, obviously Williams, a little bit of a low moment, but still, yeah, sorry, that was me slapping my arm. But yeah, I think that he's just going to be really interesting to watch how much George Russell evolves over this season. He's going to be incredible in my opinion. If the Williams car's decent, I think we can see some really special results like we've been seeing with Charles Leclerc in the 2018 season. So if I was to say the strongest lineup on the grid, wow, I just literally thought of that on the spot, and it's really thrown me into a situation which I don't know the answer to. I would say maybe Vettel and Leclerc. Vettel, Leclerc, Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. And that's only because I don't think Bottas and Gasly, they sort of drag down Mercedes and Red Bull accordingly. That's my reasoning. So Ricciardo and Hülkenberg and Vettel and Leclerc are probably my strongest two lineups in terms of the driver, just the drivers. So yeah, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of that. And as always, I'm just going to quickly end each video on just saying, if you haven't already thought about donating to my university project, that'd be massively appreciated because we're getting towards our £800 goal, and I'd massively appreciate your support on that. And any extra money that gets raised over £800 will continue to go into the project because, unfortunately, motorsport's a really expensive subject matter to be exploring, and it's a big budget. And that's for us as university students, and we're all putting our own money in, and yeah, we're still having to ask for a bit of a helping hand from you guys. So all of the reward tiers and that are really amazing, so just go and give it a look. It's in the video description. I'd massively appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel and you don't know much about me, hopefully this documentary will be able to explore a bit more about me, and you'll be able to see more about me and my personality, because sometimes in these videos it might not come across, but I hope that this documentary, this 20-minute awesome documentary, is going to really just be able to show the world of motorsport how hard it is, and also about me as a person. So that's it. Thank you for watching, guys. As always, go and check out that fundraiser if you haven't already. And yeah, remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and all that good stuff. It's been Alex and Adi. Goodbye.